She's a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and you're saying she's an asset. You're an idiot. Yes. You're an idiot. And people are tired of your bullshit.
Okay, let him respond. Benny,
change the record.
Let him respond, Benny.
Do me a favor,
change the record, bro.
Instead of attacking me,
Never Trumper Joe Walsh was a guest on Piers Morgan's show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, to engage in a debate with a panel made up of Patrick Bet-David, co-host Vinny Vincent Oshana, fitness guru and Trump voter Jillian Michaels, and podcaster Dave Smith. The topic of this section of the debate is Trump's controversial cabinet picks. We're going to take a look at these clips of Joe Walsh going up against this panel, including Piers Morgan himself. I will share my thoughts on this as well. Let's check this out together.
Former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is among President Trump's controversial picks. The incoming Director of National Intelligence spoke to Jesse Waters at Fox News.
He's already leading. He's already engaging with so many of these world leaders around the world on the phone constantly. And he's showing the kind of leadership that the American people voted for.
We're joined on the panel now as the host of A Social Contract, former Republican presidential candidate and Congressman Joe Walsh, who says that Gabbard is a Putin cheerleader. Well, Joe, welcome back to Uncensored. Do you think she's a total disaster? Why?
you can't trust her. This country cannot trust her with our intelligence. If I'm Pierce, if I'm one of our allies, there's no way if she's appointed, I'm sharing my intelligence with America. Look, I've said before, she's at best a Putin cheerleader. At worst, she's a Putin asset. For the past decade, she has done nothing but defend Vladimir Putin and parrot Putin and Russian propaganda. I mean, again, there's a list. I could take 30 minutes and go through the list. That's a humongous concern. She's not on our side. She's clearly on Russia's side.
She literally fought for America. She served her country and fought for America. How can you say she's not on our side?
She's still up here. She's still in the military. She's still in the military. Joe, first of all, this is the guy that says he's not you're not a Democrat. I remember this guy who was on the PPD podcast. You are exactly the problem that, listen to me, I want you to keep talking the way that you're talking, because of people like you, it's gonna, hey, excuse me, you know what, let me finish. Because of people like you, and your rhetoric, you know what's gonna happen? J.D. Vance is gonna be the president next, Tulsi Gabbard's gonna be the president, Eric Trump's gonna be the president. We are going to keep having Republican presidents because of people like you still talking Russia shit, Joe. Get over it. It's over.
Russia's over. We just had Ukraine launching missiles into Russia. So we're going to be dealing with Russia for quite some time. I don't know if he's talking about Russian collusion with Trump or what. But Vinny, I say this on look at the freeze frame here. Vinny always looks like he's just going to, at any moment, he could have a brain aneurysm. I mean, I wonder if they ever have anybody checking his blood pressure or anything. I worry about this guy. But the idea that, this is they talk about Trump derangement syndrome, the right-wingers do and MAGA does. They are the ones with the derangement syndrome. So Joe Walsh, if you don't fall in line behind Trump on everything, in Vinny Oshana's view, you're not really a Republican. So Joe Walsh isn't allowed to be a Republican anymore because he's not a fan of Donald Trump and he doesn't agree with Donald Trump's pick for national security.
Talking about an active military girl. She's a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and you're saying she's an asset. You're an idiot. Yes. You're an idiot. And people are tired of your bullshit.
Okay, let him respond. Benny,
change the record.
Let him respond, Benny.
Do me a favor,
change the record, bro.
Instead of attacking me, attack what I said about Tulsi Gabbard. For a decade,
she's a Russian asset.
Done nothing but parrot Putin. Address that. Address that.
But but Joe, I want to address that. Okay, I'm going to come to. Hang on. I'm going to come to Jillian in a second. All I would say, Joe, is I get an email each week from Ian Bremner, one of the guys I most respect in the political world. He's very balanced. Gives very insightful weekly emails about what's going on in the news. He said he's seen absolutely no evidence that she has ever been anything even approaching a Russian asset. It's a total myth of the Democrat side to suggest she ever has been.
Pierce, you're going to ignore 10 years of what she said?
Well, she's allowed to have she's allowed to have an opinion.
Well, of course she is.
Well, hang on, she's allowed to have an opinion about Ukraine. She can have
And this is the frustrating thing about Piers Morgan's show. He never lets Joe Walsh isn't the progressive here, but he's the never Trumper person. He never lets them speak. You have this lunatic Vinny here just yelling over him when he goes to Joe Walsh to be the speaker, and Piers Morgan never lets them get a full thought in.
An opinion about Ukraine.
No, of course she
and
is.
You may not agree with that opinion, and by the way, I don't agree with her opinion about Ukraine, but she's allowed to have it. It doesn't make her a Russian asset.
No, Pierce, exactly. She's allowed to have her opinion. Donald Trump has picked her to head up all our intelligence efforts in this country.
Yeah, but there is no evidence that she would be a threat to leaking that intelligence to Russia. It's a myth.
Not at all.
All right, let me go to Gillian.
She's either a dupe or an asset because everything she's done the past 10 years and said has been exactly what Russia would want her to say or do. So she's either an asset or a dupe.
That's the dumbest standard ever. Who cares? If I said Saddam Hussein doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, that might be exactly what Saddam Hussein wants me to say. That doesn't mean anything. You see, Pierce, this is the trick here. And I'm sorry, I know you want to go to Julian, but the trick is that the same way they used to say Trump-Russia collusion, they wouldn't say Donald Trump's in a conspiracy with the Russians. You see, because that's actually meets the criminal code. And then so you just say collusion because what does that even mean? They could have had a phone call. Okay, they're colluding, but that's totally legal. So when you say she's a Russian asset, you give this wink and a nod like she's a traitor, when what it means, and Pierce, you disagree with me on this topic too, but listen, the argument is that there were 1 million off-ramps to the war in Ukraine, and that the West chose to not take any of them, and that this war could have been avoided, and it could have been negotiated away. Now, the idea that if someone makes this argument, your counter to that is to say that you're a Putin asset. This is so, first off, it's just despicable and it's profoundly stupid. It makes absolutely no sense at all. So listen, at least during the original McCarthyism period, at least during the House Committee on American Activities, at least back then, there were some communists. Nobody is loyal to Vladimir Putin. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
You're entitled. No, Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is in.
No one is loyal to Vladimir Putin. I don't know that Dave Smith was involved in this, but we had Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, and others receiving money from the Russians, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month from the Russians that they then had to stop taking. So I don't know if that exactly counts as loyal to Putin, but they were spreading pro-Russia and anti-Ukraine propaganda. So I don't think Dave Smith is right here that there are not pro-Putin people in the country. And this is anecdotal, but I saw this throughout social media during the Obama years. I didn't see it quite as much while Biden's been in office, but people on social media saying, I wish we had a strong leader like Putin. Now, I don't know if that's totally pro-Putin. They were saying someone like Putin, but again,
entitled to her opinion as a citizen of this country. But if for 10 years your opinion is identical to Russian propaganda, we are entitled to question that. And someone like that,
you're saying nothing, and I'm entitled to make the point that that's the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life.
You both made your points. Let me bring it. Okay. Time out. Let's bring in Gillian. He's been waiting very patiently to get back in here. I mean, Gillian.
I don't know why. I mean, I guess this is what he wants. I mean, this has way over 1 million views. I don't know why he doesn't mute people or cut their mics so he, Joe Walsh is barely able to get a sentence out here.
My experience with Tulsi Gabbard, I interviewed Tulsi a couple of months ago. I thought she was extraordinarily impressive, I have to say. And I think this idea that you categorize her because she happens to think that the history of the Ukraine-Russia war, that she actually has a view, which many on the Republican side do, by the way, that actually it could have been avoided. I don't believe that, but I certainly understand that view. And it's been expressed to me by professors and everybody else. I don't certainly look upon her as some kind of traitor for having that view. What do you think?
Okay, first of all, I believe that for half of those 10 years, wasn't she a celebrated Democrat, or am I forgetting or missing something? That said, let's look at what she's actually said. So this is a combat veteran that was deployed to Iraq, which was an absolute pointless war by neocons like Dick Cheney, who I personally think is a war criminal, but we could table that argument for another day. This is a woman that I imagine has seen people die in horrible ways, has seen mothers lose sons, wives lose husbands. She's for peace. Now, when you are engaging in a proxy war with a nuclear power,
we're going to see if Tulsi Gabbard is for peace when it comes to some countries in the Middle East. I'm going to guess she's not so peaceful there. One question I would ask is, why is Jillian Michaels talking about this? I mean, I'm just a guy with a microphone, so I have no credentials or anything, but it would make sense, I guess, having Jillian Michaels talking about RFK Jr. and, you know, his supposed health expertise. That makes sense. But is she any kind of a foreign policy expert or national security expert? I don't know that much about Jillian Michaels. Let me know in the comments if she is a national security expert or just a fitness guru. Not that there's anything wrong with being a fitness guru, but is she really qualified to talk about this? And they keep saying Tulsi Gabbard is entitled to her opinion. Sure, everybody in the United States is entitled to their opinion. That doesn't mean that they get to be part of a presidential cabinet. And Jillian Michaels is talking about she's seen people die, you know, in combat and all of this. Yeah, there'd be millions of combat veterans who have seen combat. My dad's a veteran. He wasn't actually in combat, but I know quite a few combat veterans who are great people and intelligent people. I wouldn't want them to be part of a presidential cabinet. So I'm not really sure what exactly makes her qualified for this, other than we know really what the answer is, that Tulsi Gabbard is a Trump loyalist, and Trump expects that she will do whatever he tells her to do, just like Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth and these other, RFK Jr., I guess. He seems a little bit more rogue, but they were picked because they're Trump loyalists. Not that they're going to benefit the country in any way. They're going to benefit Donald Trump. Let's hear a little bit more of what Jillian Michaels had to say.
I would imagine that we should do everything possible to ensure that that does not happen. And in addition, she's also raising the alarm bell about biochemical weapons in Ukraine, these labs, which is exactly how we got COVID, is gain of function research. And she has said specifically that we need diplomacy, that if you look at Reagan, he spoke with Gorbachev. If you look at Kennedy, he spoke with Khrushchev to avoid disaster. That's what she has advocated for. That's why she sat with Assad and all of the people, the people that opposed him. She sat with everybody when she went to Syria. Didn't Nancy Pelosi also sit with Assad, unless I'm crazy? And not only that, if we look at, I'm with Dave.
Well,
I have done a lot of homework on this one.
Civilians, well before.
Okay, so here's my question. So you wouldn't sit down with these kinds of people and you would just let people die when, ironically, it's the military-industrial complex that's making, oh my God, isn't it almost $1 trillion off of these wars? I mean, who's profiting off of this? There were numerous off-ramps here. So what are you going to do? You want to punch Putin in the nose because he's a bully?
Okay, let me ask.
All right, so I'm going to stop here. If you want to watch the whole thing, it's over an hour. It's almost an hour and a half. It's on Piers Morgan's Uncensored channel. Now, I want to discuss a few of the points that Jillian Michaels is saying here. I don't disagree with a lot of what she's saying here. Iraq was a disaster. And, you know, she's talking about the military-industrial complex and all this kind of stuff. Does anyone really think, you know, the right-wingers and the MAGA people have talked about this the past 4 years. Oh, Trump was we had peace and he was the peace candidate and all this kind of stuff. He increased drone bombings from what Obama was doing, which were already too many. And he claims, you know, there's going to be peace in the Middle East with Israel and Gaza. We'll see what happens there. But if any, you know, I would love to see it. If I will eat my words, if Donald Trump gets in there for the second term and says, hey, we're going to, start closing down some of these military bases. We don't need 900 military bases around the world. And we're not going to, we're going to let these other countries handle their conflicts, blah, 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 all of that. I would be for that. But people are kidding themselves if they believe that Donald Trump is going to go up against the military industrial complex. He's going to, every president does. But he increased defense funding while he was president, and defense funding will go up while he's president the second time. So this is just nonsense to think that Donald Trump is going to be any kind of peace president, and he's going to solve the problems in the Middle East and blah, 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 and he's going to, do anything other than be a puppet to Putin. But what do you think about what Jillian Michaels, Dave Smith, Vinnie Vincent Oshana, and Joe Walsh had to say here on Piers Morgan Show? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. My channel's growing really quickly. I want to continue to grow, so if you like what I'm doing, make sure to subscribe to the channel. This is Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.